asking tough questions. Um, so I'm so grateful to have found a place where that is a benefit and celebrated and valuable to people, because let me tell you, my parents didn't love why, but why all the time, and that was me. So, okay, before we jump in, to help me set my context, I wanted to start with, in addition to where you're located, I want to know what department you represent within your organization, and is CX an official part of your role? Are you responsible for customer experience? Does anyone have that role on your team? Let me know before I jump in. Today, we're going to talk about taking control of your customer's experience, why we do that, and how.
Yeah, it seems like here some people might not. Let's see, Carly here, but no marketing with no dedicated role to UX role specifically. We have Lataya here, owner and operator. Sandra here, transformation strategist role. CE is in my hands. Bree here, marketing manager for a criminal law firm. Customer experience is a huge part of my role. So yeah, Alexander here, marketing project manager. So yeah, looks like
Oh,
it.
interesting. Good deal. Okay. Okay. Very cool. So a lot of marketing represented. So that'll be a very interesting lens for this conversation. Okay, keep it coming and I'll keep an eye on it, but let's jump in. So first I have to ask, what if the best brands in the world aren't determined by their advertising budgets? I think especially in the marketing sphere, we get caught up that we can't be the greatest because we don't have a huge budget, or we can't compete because we don't have a huge budget. What makes an iconic brand though? Is it how much they put behind their Super Bowl spots or their pay-per-click campaigns? I'm not saying don't advertise, but I just want to acknowledge that advertising alone isn't a long-term and sustainable strategy. So where do we go from there, right? So let's consider Subaru. I want to know from you guys, why do they stand out as iconic and well-loved? What do y'all have to think of on that one? Are they? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I'm a Subaru owner. This is an upgrade that I made last year, or actually earlier this year, after being in Colorado for a few years. And there were many tangible and intangible reasons why I chose a Subaru. A lot of them were features, right? But I mean, Renee, you mentioned love. That, I mean, that comes around into it, and they talk about the Subaru love a lot through their experience. But it isn't the first car I've bought, and I can say that the experience navigating the dealership and the purchase was unique and definitely stood out to me compared to other car buying experiences. So going through the whole process, I won't take you through the whole story. That's like, we got to share that over a cup of coffee or something. It's a whole journey. But I really wanted to think about and share with you guys what the ongoing experience is like. So when I bought the car, they did sell me packages. And it's funny because, the bias we have against car dealerships and selling you all the packages, but they sold me some really value-adding packages. They explained why those packages were value-adding and how long or short I'd recoup my costs on those. So they hooked me into doing my maintenance and upkeep of the car at their dealership, which I didn't mind because the environment's nice. They've created a coffee shop with free locally roasted espresso and fruit and snacks and water. So how can I be mad about that? I have the privilege of working remotely, so I just go and post up at my car dealership coffee shop when I need to get work done. But the benefit for them means that anytime I need upkeep, extras, they continue to get revenue from me. They know that because of all the systems they've put into place, my car is well maintained, on schedule, and they make it as easy as possible for me to maintain my schedule, which means that the trade-in value of the car that I'll eventually bring back to them is the max value it can be for the age. And when I buy my next car, it'll be from them. They're creating all of these mechanisms of loyalty, right? So overall, increasing my lifetime value, my loyalty, and the rate of referral to other customers. Of course, they're a huge brand, right? And they definitely have a lot of costs associated with this, but small brands can do it too. Before I moved to Colorado 4 years ago, I lived in Baton Rouge and I had another car, and there was a small tire shop, single location. And the second time I visited for new tires, I pulled up, I walked in, and they greeted me by name. And that was a very impactful impression that they made on me at that time, because I was young. I had been mistreated and misjudged at other mechanic shops who assumed that I didn't know what I was talking about. And they automatically knew what they had done for my car before. So, that was huge, and it took us miles, and I told everybody about that shop whenever I was living down there. So, those are just a couple stories to kind of set our frame of reference of it's small moments as well as large milestones that really make up customer experience. But the whole premise behind it, right, is that we believe at 368 in interaction over interruption. And that's where marketing, advertising, and beyond all come together. It's the convergence of technology and brand together. That's a special place for customer experience. It's really what ties together everything we do. We know that today is all about distraction. We know that it's there's noise everywhere. There's so many things vying for our attention, and especially those of us who spend a lot of time digitally. But individuals we're emotional beings. We're not rational beings, and product differentiation is getting smaller and smaller, right? We're not always selling that much of a different product than maybe our competitors. So how do we stand out? We stand out by winning affection through interactive experiences. We grow our brands in this way instead of vying for stealing attention. So when you find that sweet spot at that convergence of technology and brand, that's where you're putting intention and attention to detail to bring your brand to life. You're building loyal fans at that point that'll lead into organic growth that lasts longer than your PPC budget ever will. So I want to walk through today kind of this agenda here. So I'll tell you a little bit more about how we define CX, what goes into that, the business case for why this makes sense, because emotion sounds fluffy, but there's ROI to it. We also will then go into your brand springboard, where you get started and why we inject brand first before we get into the weeds. Then we'll give you frameworks for how you actually get into the details, and we'll address the common hurdles that a lot of teams and organizations face and some ideas for how to overcome those. So, what is CX? Simply put, it's how your brand makes people think, feel, and act based on their interactions with you, the collective interactions. It's tangible and intangible. We, as operatives within a brand, often think of our organization in silos and investments, different services, departments, channels, products, all managed separately, different teams who are responsible for them. And this is all of the skeleton that makes up a brand, of course, but we have to join those together because our audiences don't see those skeletons. They don't see those components, but they feel the impacts of silos. CX is kind of like the nervous system that ties it all together and that, connects the dots. It's not a product problem. CX and UX often get merged into one thought. But if you take the UX principles and expand them out, then you start to look at CX. But it's also not a customer support problem. So often keeping the customer happy is relegated to our support or customer service team. And they're sitting on an island trying to make up for things when nobody else is working with them. And they're working kind of against the grain of the rest of the organization. And this really requires everyone working together to get to your ideal vision of CX. Customers today expect fluidity. Friction will cause people to step away. we have really very little patience with brands these days because we know there's a better option out there. And what you end up with, great CX, an increase in retention, an increase in satisfaction, an increase in revenue. So we have to give people something to care about. The business case, right? 86% of buyers are willing to pay more for a great customer experience. Willing to pay more, 13 to 20% more for premium experiences. And there's many studies that support this. So if you know, a lot of times we don't invest in CX because of the added expense, but if you can price up for that expense, know that you'll recoup that cost if you prove yourself. We also see that 49% of buyers make impulse purchases after a personalized experience. So can you shorten your rates of conversion, capture some of those impulse buys? Like I said, we're not rational beings. And ultimately, more than 2/3 of companies are now competing primarily on the basis of CX, which is up from 36% in 2010. So it's nearly doubled in a decade. And this is what I talked about, that gap in differentiation closing. It's harder and harder to offer that truly unique aspect of your product, which if you have them, yes, let's talk about them and celebrate them. But know that a lot of customers are not making decisions simply based on product features. They're looking for something more to hold on to. And then finally, 75% of consumers expect brands to contextualize and personalize interactions based on their service histories. They know you have the data, especially today, and how much is talked about in public discourse and news. Consumers are getting more and more educated on the data that brands have, and they don't want you to sell that data, but they do want you to use it to make their experience better on your platform, whatever that is. You can expedite their process. You can, you know, connect them, help them find what they're looking for, connect them to things they didn't know they needed to solve problems that they do have. There's so many things you can do with it, with the data that you have within your organization. And we'll talk more about that later. And then ultimately, investing in CX initiatives have the potential to double your revenue within 36 months. Studies have shown this, different data models have shown this. It really is a very, very impactful endeavor, but the challenge that we face is that it's a front-end investment with long-term ripple effect growth. So it's different than performance marketing, which in kind of this last era of digital marketing has kind of reigned supreme, and that you don't see things so directly A to B. But over the long term, investing and succeeding in CX is an increase in conversion rates, an increase in loyalty and lifetime value, and an organic growth increase in conversion as well. So what makes great CX? Some examples, some stories, because we like examples. So good CX satisfies customers, yes, but it also can be forgettable. You know, I like to think of it like the autopilot commute home. It's so easy to go from point A to point B and not really remember how you got there if nothing stands out to you. It's a good thing, and you're not unhappy, but you're not particularly happy either. You're just glad to be where you needed to be. But what do you need to make it stand out in your mind, right? Something happened. Did you see a really cool car? Did you see a really cool vintage car? Did you see a party on the side of the road? Did you see a new restaurant open that you want to check out? Did you see a car crash? Were you involved in a car crash? You'll probably remember really minute details all around any of those things. Great CX is similar. Great CX is when we take brand strategy principles and bring them to life through these moments of interaction, taking something that might be mundane and making it special. So we consider a great brand one that is distinct, consistent, and memorable. And if we dial that down into those small moments, what does that look like? It looks like making people feel something. People want something to care about. So let them feel you. Let them feel what your brand should be known for, and beyond the initial yes as well. You want to shoot for a 5-star experience or above that, which we'll talk a little bit more about too. But these brands represented here kind of give great examples for that. You look at distinct brands that stand out among buyers' choices. Yeah, exactly, Renee, exactly. Southwest has so many aspects of the travel experience that are uniquely theirs. The 2 free checked bags, the way that you board the plane without seat reservations, and just the look and feel of everything. But all of these small elements kind of come together to make that distinct Southwest experience that will make some people go directly to them and not even price shop. You have consistency. That means you're expected and reliable. So when a consumer wants a desired outcome, they're going to think of you first. I like the human being as an example for this. That's a drive-through coffee shop, and every coffee you get, they include a chocolate-covered espresso bean on your coffee, which is just an extra smile, an extra treat that you get from them. Another great example of this is Raising Cane's. When you want a hot, fast drive-through meal that is gonna be good, you know, Raising Cane's is always there. You know, it is interesting because of course no brand is always great, but if you're building brand loyalty, we have some really interesting stats about a consumer's rate of forgiveness whenever they're loyal to your brand. So, you know, travel's a tough one. Finally, I'll pick on with memorable Grove Collaborative. Grove is a natural and sustainable home health and beauty brand. So they have an online presence, they're direct to consumer, and they really want to reinforce that doing business with them is good for the earth and good for your home. And so they find all kinds of unexpected and delightful ways to remind you of that. One of my favorite is the confirmation on their add to cart button. When you add a product to cart, instead of just giving you a check mark or product added to cart or your typical option here, they put microcopy phrases that make you feel good. They'll say good choice or added naturally, or just different little phrases here that are surprising you and giving you a smile and saying, yes, that's a good thing I just did there, right? Yeah, handwritten notes on the boxes. They do free gifts with their purchases. I mean, they have a really interesting model that I'll probably reference again in other examples. But those are 3 of my examples, but I want to know what brands make you smile, what brands stick out in your mind, or the converse, what customer experiences maybe have left you feeling frustrated lately? I'd love a rapid fire. Oh, Tracy, I'll talk about Chewy later. Yeah.
I love that she said
Dutch
that.
Bros is definitely also on the mind. They're reliably consistent and delightful as well. Oh yeah, Jay, absolutely agree. That's really all it is. You know, as we are breaking down the barriers more and more between brands and organizations as these big entities, and you know, especially over these past few years, we've all just gotten so much more authentic, and people are expecting that authenticity. They recognize that there's humans behind this. It's not about being perfect, and that's really what the whole goal is here. And actually, here, developing a practice. I call it a CX practice because it's not about achieving perfection, setting it and leaving it. It's not a once and done project here. Customer experience is a discipline within your company that you would look at all the time. It's something that you need to work into your budgets. It's something that you need to work into your operating rhythms, your conversations, and just come at it with a sense of wanting to learn and improve. Trader Joe's is also a good one. So in the CX practice, it's kind of like this cycle. You start with your brand values. This is what you want to be known for. seek to understand your audiences, understand them as people, understand what they're going through beyond touching your brand, understand what they care about, what their values are. Map out your touch points, have an awareness, don't let things slip by you, have an awareness of how they interact with your brand and see your brand. Build a community that will give you feedback, ask for feedback, receive feedback, listen to the feedback, and then act on it. That's what people want to see, because when you give feedback and people don't see incremental changes, that is more upsetting than anything. People expect, and there's stats I didn't pull into the presentation, but people expect that when they give feedback, it's listened to these days. And when they see you making incremental improvements, even if it's not the direct improvement that they need right now, they see that you're making incremental improvements and they have more patience. I know that among our team, we've had that with Adobe. When they launched XD several years ago, there was so many features that we wanted to see, but they release monthly, this is what we're working on, this is what we've launched, and give you opportunities to submit that feedback, and we see things rolling out. Product companies, SaaS companies have really great platforms to do that, but there's all kinds of companies that can, that can act on that too. So this is going to be a cycle that you're in all the time, but I'm going to give you some springboards today to work on it. Know your brand. That's a great one to start with. And the reason is because, like I said, you don't want to just shoot for mediocrity. We don't want 3-star experiences. We don't want forgettable. We want stuff that really shines as uniquely yours. So our goal of this exercise is to close what we call the brand gap. There is hemorrhaging money in the brand gap. So many organizations are pumping millions into advertising budgets, saying a whole lot and not doing it. So if you're saying things you're not doing, that's one problem. A better problem to have, but still a problem, is when you're doing things and not saying them, not telling those stories. When the things that you're doing that make you, that make you great, are stuck in the archives, stuck in, single conversations, or if you happen to get the right support person or whatever. Either way, you're losing money in this gap. So our goal to close this gap means that all touch points are working together, right? So that they're not competing with each other, and ultimately you're winning hearts and not just convincing minds. So before you get lost in the weeds of the specifics, the details, you want to locate your North Star, set your sights. And you'll do that by beginning to answer critical questions about your brand. Now, these questions don't constitute a brand strategy. My strategy team would be so upset if I said that they did, and I really don't believe that they do. We love to dig into these questions and lay out full systems and platforms to support brands. But the reality is sometimes you just need to get started. And while you're working on creating your full brand system, a great place to get started is by just answering these questions and writing down your answers. It's primer on brand, we could say. Writing them down specifically makes them real. That's a problem that we see with a lot of clients and partners, is they have an idea of their personality, but they've never written it down in words that are replicable beyond the director or the founder or whomever is, holding this knowledge, this feeling that they haven't put words to. So by asking yourself these questions and writing down your answers, you start to make real your values, your marketplace position, your personality, that can really become gauges for these future activities that we'll go through. So do you have values? Are those values true and acted upon? Or are they just words on a wall or on a web page? What do you want to be known for? How should your audience feel after interacting with you? How do you uniquely serve your audience among your competition? And what challenges is your brand facing specifically that are worth looking at? After answering these questions, you'll go into feedback. Feedback is all around us. Yes, there are surveys. Yes, there is NPS. Do not take these single data points as the whole story. Seek a whole story. And you do this by looking at all different facets of the issue. First, conversations. Conversations are so important. That is the baseline of all the work that we do. If you can't do anything else, have a few conversations and look at all different angles. What are your loyal customers loving about you? What made new customers choose to purchase from you? Have you lost customers? Why did they leave? Look also for other people that are speaking on behalf of your brand. Do you have partners, whether that's a loyalty program, referral partners, anything like that? Do you maybe have donors or other types of audiences that aren't customers? What do your executives think here? It's really important to go up, down, and across, right? That we want to know what makes them proud to be a part of the brand. What are their main goals? And then look at the people on your front line. Is that your sales team, your customer support team? If you have brick and mortar, talk to your frontline workers. If you have an hourly workforce, retail stores, whatever that might look like, hear their perspective and listen to them as well. Consider primary data in kind of building this full picture. Like I said, we have surveys, yes, but what can you learn from support tickets? What can you learn from sales history and the patterns you might find there? Email engagement, emailed feedback specifically. So we have a practice here, not only of taking, feedback we receive that's negative, but also like cool things clients say and sharing that out. And bringing that out of a one-to-one email thread and sharing that with the rest of the team. What caused them to say that? Chat logs, CRM, all of these things really can tell you a lot about how customers are interacting with your brand. And then finally, observe outward on the internet. There's a lot out there. Look at social comments, look at hashtags related to what you do, look at competitors' profiles and what conversations are going on their brand. Look to Reddit or YouTube or other niche forums that are attached to what you do. And then also look to trends, news, and other cultural awareness opportunities that can maybe help you find new angles or predict what's coming next and start to move from reactive to proactive opportunities. The main takeaway here is that you're seeking to understand before worrying about a solution and avoiding fault or defensive mechanisms. It's hard for some teams to look at feedback because it might be a time when you say, we are not executing like we want to. But that's okay because you have to start with knowing where you're at now before you can make a change. So step away from it doesn't matter how we got here today. It matters how we take this information and start to take steps forward. What we want to do through all these activities is reveal the unspoken rules and norms that make you you. So you started with the hypothesis about your brand. You looked at all of the data. Did you reveal anything new or different than how you saw yourself? Is there anything that you said was really important to you that you're not executing on? Did you learn anything that customers really love about your brand that wasn't top of mind for you? What needs do they have that aren't being met? Jot those down, make adjustments, but don't abandon your core here. That's why we look at what people say and what people do, because people don't always say exactly what they do. There's an old UX quote. Some of you are probably familiar with this. Ford said when creating the Model T, if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse, not a car, because they can't always imagine the solution like you can. But you can definitely learn a lot from your customers. You don't always know the solution either. So some more stories. I love the example of Patagonia as a brand that really lives this top to bottom. And, a lot of us are familiar with Patagonia because they do have a lot of bold advertising, but they're really just amplifying things that they're already doing. So buy less, demand more. Their brand principles, their brand values are about sustainability and being good for the earth, building great products that last longer because developing less, building less is better for the earth. So they don't just say this, but they live it. They want you to keep a product as long as possible. And so, of course, there's lots of things that they do here, but it's all the way down to all the components that go into their product. The zipper that they choose because it specifically can be repaired. A centralized workshop that repairs their clothing for customers, and a brand that repurposes their items and resells them for things that can't be repaired. So they really give so many kind of a funnel of its own, so many layered experiences that reinforce this. If you are interested in this topic, this is also a book recommendation. One of my favorite books I've ever read, Let My People Go Surfing. It's by the Patagonia founder, Yvon Chouinard, really walking through the details of all of, what makes up their brand principles and how they execute. But what I loved about the book was two things. One, progress over perfection, right? Yvon Chouinard, he shares that their main principle here is that they're not at the end result. They don't consider themselves done as a company. There's always more, and every time there's an opportunity to improve, they audit it, they define it, and they act upon it. But then also a great reminder from the book in that Patagonia as a brand started because of a huge ethical mistake. And I am a climber and love the mountains and would be happy to nerd out on that mistake. But basically, they started a brand for some gear, realized the damage it was causing, and pivoted their entire model because of that damage. Back at the very beginning of their brand. And ever since then, have not been afraid to say, we can be better, we'll do better. Another example is this comparison here. So you don't have to read it all. You can check it out later. But what we're looking at here is Allbirds versus Limbs. These are comparable shoe companies. Similar products, similar price points. Really, they're smaller brands, they're hip shoe brands, yes. But very different results. So on one side, Allbirds is a LinkedIn post. Somebody went on their own volition to say, oh my God, I can't believe this, because their dog ate up their shoes. And Allbirds was so nice about helping them resolve that issue. They said, please don't be angry with your puppy, in their email, and helped him get a new pair of shoes. So this guy went and shared with his whole network, which probably put their brand in front of people who had never seen them before. On the opposite side, you have Limbs, which, if you go and look at their reviews, are 1 stars up and down, notoriously talking about how they are difficult to work with. Their sizing charts are wrong. They make the customer feel at fault. Whenever you try to get a resolution to an issue you're having, they make excuses or give you an attitude. And so all these things, which could easily be resolved, but what it means is that customers that were looking at your brand, that you had done the work of getting them to consider you, are now dissuaded from making a purchase. Unfortunately, I can speak to that one firsthand. My husband got a two pair. One pair fit great. He ordered another pair of shoes in a different size, or same size, different pair of shoes, and they did not fit, and they were so difficult. They do not really accept returns. There's people's, I don't know, all kinds of stuff. It's kind of crazy, actually. And they basically just like, we're a small business, we can't help it. But the customer doesn't accept that nowadays. I mean, one of the reviews here is, you can't keep up. And I don't suggest people do business with you. So how do we mitigate that? That's where we get tactical, because I highly doubt that Limbs wants to be known for bad customer service, but that's where they are. And they could really look at some of those specific moments and improving them. So in this section, we'll go through our principle, our model for doing this, some more cool data points of why this makes sense, and some frameworks as well. So here we start with thinking beyond the journey map. That's my first challenge to you. Maybe you could say the journey map is dead, but But really, we think about customer experience as a full life cycle. We consider all of the milestones and moments that comprise your audience's relationship with your brand. It's not point A to a conversion. Since we live in such an omni-channel world, this path to purchase that we've always considered, this funnel, it's not linear, nor does it represent the potential for exponential growth that exists when you do build that relationship over time. And I know we have a lot of marketing representatives here. So often the marketing discipline is so focused on converting. And then, like I said earlier, you hand the customer off to support or whomever, and then you're on to the next campaign, the next metric, the next month. But what happens when we think about that all as a brand exercise? The earning and keeping a customer as a brand exercise. Um, This is interesting. Imagine little arrows here connecting all around. They're not showing up for some reason. It's a cycle. Why do I emphasize connecting all these points though? Well, a couple data points. So it's 5 to 25 times more costly to acquire a new customer over retaining an existing customer. This is data from HBR. So cost savings, that's an easy one. We know that today's customers are more skeptical than ever, but they're also 28% more likely to recommend a longtime favorite brand versus a newer brand, 50% more likely to forgive, and 22% more likely to share data with. It is in your benefit to build longtime loyal customers. You can make mistakes and they will probably forgive you. They'll have a lot more patience with you. You can get more rich data from them. And like we've been talking about, that organic referral growth. And these are numbers from Deloitte as well. So how? Of course, it sounds great, but how? So you start with an investment of upfront energy, lay a foundation, and then prioritize. That's the big thing. Oftentimes when we talk to clients about CX projects, it just seems like such an overwhelming feat, and it can be big to get started with. But if you prioritize and you don't try to tackle this whole behemoth at one time, then you can get a lot further faster. Remember, we talked about incremental progress. So start with outlining your milestones. List your audiences. You have multiple audiences. Pick one to start with. What milestones do they experience in relation to your brand? Consider the ones you're involved with. So the first transaction, the first engagement, renewal, or whatever other milestones you're involved with. And then consider the things that are happening in their life outside of your brand, opportunities in their lifestyle that could be, future milestones that you touch. Then sit down and workshop the details. So this is where I will introduce a framework to kind of audit and score your different touch points, the moments within your outline. I suggest starting with just a whiteboard sketch here. Don't fill out some huge spreadsheet to start for your milestone outline. But then when you get into your assessments, then you'll go to your framework here and get into the details. So that's where you will identify your ideal outcomes, your emotional trajectory. What are they experiencing? And then you'll prioritize the moments that need the biggest lift. Start with your most critical areas and lift them up, lift your audience up. And we'll explain more on that in here in a second. And then finally, improve incrementally. What we've been going on, one bite at a time, one step at a time. Don't change everything overnight. Be honest with yourself about your resources and work it into your ongoing priorities. That's the biggest hurdle, I think. And there's a whole section on hurdles here because it's a hard project. It is. But if you work it into your practices day to day, you'll keep taking those steps forward. Thank you, guys. This comes back to acting on feedback. Hear it, act on it. People will notice that you're making an effort over time and give you that grace to continue improving. Ultimately, audiences want brands that show empathy and intention. That attention to detail goes a long way. They don't expect you to always have it right, but work on it. So, as you're looking at your outlines, and especially today and all of the marketing pubs and groups and everything, there's so much discourse out there about experimental technology, about the metaverse, about AI, about all these things. So I challenge that because I think it's all super valuable and we love building it, yes. But before you build your brand into the metaverse, audit your fundamentals, get your house in shape, go where the consumers are today and make sure they're having a great experience from your brand. That way, whenever you do innovate and you do experiment, you have an audience there who is accepting your R&D and who will give you feedback and who will beta test for you and be that community to help you succeed there. All right, off my soapbox. Prioritizing where to begin. This is one, of course, you're going to lay out your whole map. You're going to have all these milestones. You're going to see all these opportunities. And you're going to feel overwhelmed. But prioritizing based on emotional trajectory is a really great way to get the maximum impact first. The way you do this is by considering how your audience is feeling in that moment, how they're feeling coming into it. You can kind of boil down emotions into 4 main categories: happy, sad, afraid, or angry. And we know that there's different actions that cause them to feel that way. Some things are really small and minute and easy to affect. We know that in e-commerce, adding something to cart is a hit of joy, but looking at delivery and shipping fees and all that stuff, maybe feeling a little bit angry, and it's not necessarily angry at your brand, but it's inconvenience, right? So there's different things you can do around that frustration. But then you can also look at their life. If you are providing, say, a coaching product, a therapy product, or perhaps your, we'll pick on Chewy here in a minute, and what might be happening with your relationship with your pet. You can look at times when people are afraid, when people are upset, when people are sad in their life, and it might not be that big of a deal to your brand, but if you can lift them up and provide them with a hero moment, right? You're a hero in a low point for them, then it goes so far. Also, amplify good moments. Instead of accepting a moment at a 3 or 4 star level, how can we make it awesome? How can we make it extra delightful, extra surprising? Whatever you do, though, avoid boredom and mediocrity. That's not what people want, and it's not the best investment of your time. Kenny was reading a book and shared with me recently, I thought, a great model for thinking about this. I've mentioned the kind of stars here. We often rank things on a 5-star rating. 3 stars is probably, fine, but not good or great. Like we talked about, not memorable. You won't recommend anyone go to a 3-star experience. We think about 5 stars, but what happens when you start thinking about 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-star experiences? Dream big. A 10-star experience is something that's probably not feasible for you to actually put together, but put words to it. What would it look like? Go to the moon and then work backwards from there. Because if you work with, where you're at now and you're landing on the moon variety, somewhere in between there is going to be great. So ultimately, ask yourself how you can add moments of surprise and joy and support to your customers based on where they're feeling. And again, there's a business case to it because emotions are not just fluffy. We are emotional beings, right? This isn't just logical, I ask you for this, you get that transactions. 83% of buyers are willing to purchase from a brand they have an emotional connection with. They have more concessions for their budget and for price and all those things if they feel like that emotional connection is there. 52% is the value of an emotionally connected consumer, a customer, over customers who are highly satisfied but not emotionally connected. This is really interesting because, it's not saying that these customers are unhappy, but again, it brings to light that 3-star to 5-star experience, right? Satisfied, yes, I'll purchase, I'll transact there, but will I go the extra mile? Will I spend more? Will I refer? Maybe not. This is also where impulse purchases come into play as well. So, we've talked about Chewy a little bit here in chat and mentioned them a couple times, but you look on the internet and you can find dozens of examples of Chewy living this value of finding low moments in the emotional trajectory of their customers and lifting them. And these are just a few examples, but this pet portrait here and this handwritten card are for a family that lost their pug. Their pug was on prescription diet food that was $70 a bag. And so they messaged and said, hey, what can I do about this? So not only did Chewy tell them to donate the food to a shelter and give them back their money, that's great, right? Great customer service. You make me feel a little bit better about the money, but that doesn't heal the gap of your pet being lost. But then this customer got a handwritten note about that, a sympathy card, and an oil painting of their pet of a photo that they had found somewhere. This is flowers, also from a sympathy situation. There's also a testimonial here about someone who was in an abusive relationship whose significant other threw all of their stuff out of the house where it got ruined in the weather, including a cat tower for her rescue cats. And she emailed Chewy to ask for a discount code to help replace the tower, and they sent her a new one. And then this one is from someone who had just kind of a regular customer complaint and just made light of it and kind of had a fun email here and had characters as her dogs and stuff. But it's an email back from Chewy playing along with the theme and having fun with her and just being real. You can tell that it's, they're not giving away free product here, but it's a human typing this message. She even says, after laughing so hard I cried and sharing your email with our entire office, I'm now able to dispatch our Chewy troops. And then she goes on to resolve the issue and poke fun at the joke she made here. Humanity makes a hell of a difference. Even if you can't resolve the core issue, if it's beyond you, if you can talk to them, in a way that is reflective of your brand as well as acknowledging of their humanity, you'll go far. And it's funny because I'm actually the daughter of a vet. So I grew up all around the pet world, and definitely for me, small business is important. And I grew up seeing kind of how brands such as Chewy do affect the past retail environment of a vet clinic. And I think things are changing now, of course, but I first was kind of against Chewy, but after seeing all this, it's changed my mind about them and I do use them now. So touch points, this is our scorecard. We'll send you a fillable and usable version of this, the template here. But what you'll do is you'll take each one and you'll fill this out and you'll end up knowing which ones are healthy and which ones are not healthy. And you use these, audit them regularly, and build on them. I'm happy to answer any specific questions about these as you get into it and manipulate this for your purposes. Not precious about it, but this is the model that we use when thinking about something like this. So I'm happy to share, and yeah, you'll have that in the follow-up email. So I know we're getting short on time, so I'm going to talk about hurdles. This all sounds great, but what in your mind are you anxious about right now? What do you see in your mind that's going to stop you from doing this with your team? Rapid fire. Give me a few answers. That's cheating, Kenny. You already know.
Do I?
Yep. I mean, time and money, right? That's what stops us all from anything. It's all about priority setting. Yeah, exactly. These are good. Well, that's good. Yeah, pretty much got it. Most commonly heard barriers from our conversations on the topic: employee buy-in, consistency, and cost. Time and money problems. Absolutely. Now, employee buy-in is making sure oftentimes like your frontline workers, like if you set these parameters in place, are people going to follow them? So first, consider your employee experience as one of your highest priority audiences to address, because if you say your brand values are X and your employees are not experiencing benefits of those brand values, what incentive do they have to ensure that the customer gets that? That becomes a lie to their lived experience. Communicate the purpose behind new rules or procedures that are put into place. I was never the kid to say to just follow a rule without knowing why, like I said earlier. But you know, as humans, we just don't want to be told what to do without understanding why it matters. And then allow autonomy and execution. If you set a budget or an expectation for it, give them a little bit of liberty to do it in the way that works best in the moment. Consistency would be kind of your time and follow through. From here, you know, it's important for leadership to model the behavior, whoever is leading this. It's important to make it easy with a toolkit, and it's important to train and repeat often. By a toolkit, I mean templates, parameters, guides, references, things that make it real. And then cost. Get creative with tactics. It doesn't have to cost a whole lot of money to do, but set that budget ahead of time. Cost is reallocating existing efforts. So you can take things that are not working for you now and stop spending so much time on them and reallocate time into this. You know, we talked about channels. A lot of marketing teams especially have so many channels. Really audit which channels are maybe not working for you or maybe not top priority, and let yourself go from those. Step away from them a little bit, reallocate, and test. Not only should you be considering tests with your channels and your communication tactics, but test your own operations and procedures. And then plan ahead. If it's not something that's in your budget of time or money today, plan ahead for it next month, next quarter, next year. Put it in your budget and figure out how to make it happen. Get started. A couple of fun examples, you know, we share our values here at 368. We, of course, talk about them, but every week in our Monday morning all hands, we as a team give each other shout outs about individuals living the values. And this is a way that it's in our discourse every week and gives other people examples of what living the values looks like to make them more real and allow them to express that autonomy. Lastly, I don't have it on here, but I will address, you know, when it comes to that conversions versus full experience, like I've shared here, there's so many business reasons. There's so many bottom line reasons why it makes sense. You have to really look at, you know, those executive interviews. What do they care most about? And just as we have to address the emotions and needs and frustrations of our audience, do the same for your executives. Paint a case for how it can change your business and what money you're leaving on the table not doing this. There's something at stake here. So the time is now. Get started. It doesn't have to be that complicated. All right. I'm just about at time. Stopping. Let's become friends. That's what I got. Here's my contact information and something I do want to offer, because this is an overwhelming topic for a lot of teams when you're not built in that way. So we want to offer free 30-minute consults for the first 10 replies to our follow-up email. And I'd be happy to talk through your burning CX question and see what I can do to help.
Yeah, we'll get that follow-up email as soon as we
Yep.
close this. We'll upload. We'll do all that good stuff. You'll have it in the next few hours, y'all. Yeah, thank you, Tara, for offering something very, very, very awesome. Look, I know we're going to try to end on time. Let's take one or two questions here. If anyone has any burning questions, if not, you can reply directly to the email because it will be going from Tara. So,
Yep.
do we have anything here? No one want to take a shot? Oh, thank you, Carly, Leona, Bree. Yeah, look at all this love, Tara. It's nothing but this.
Well, this is, this really has been a passion of mine for a long time. This is where I feel like is the unifying anchor of all the work that we do, and all the work that our industry often does in marketing and beyond. And so to put structure to it, it was a labor of love putting this together and something I'm really excited to share.
Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and end on time then. Anyone that has any questions, they can reach to you directly. Um,
Absolutely.
Thank you, Tara, for putting this together. It was awesome. I share
It's been fun.
everyone's
Thank y'all
compliments.
for following along.
Yep. And y'all, we'll be back soon with another webinar. Thanks for tuning in
Absolutely.
today. Appreciate y'all so much. Look out for that follow-up email. It'll have the recording plus some other goodies. We'll see y'all soon. Take care, y'all.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, y'all. Take care.